See, I have refined you, though not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. Isaiah 48:10. The spiritual man judges all things but is himself to be judged by no one. 1 Corinthians 2:15. Something shifted, and you felt it, not with your eyes, not even with your ears, but in your spirit, a subtle restlessness, a holy disturbance, a sense that everything you thought was normal was no longer enough. This wasn't a crisis, it was a summons. In the moment you started ascending, the invisible war began. You thought you were just becoming more spiritual. You thought maybe your heart was opening up. But no, heaven had filed your case, and the courtroom of eternity unsealed your scroll. Elevate them. Awaken them. Begin transition to fifth dimension. And hell, watching, trembling, scheming, issued its retaliation. Drain them before they rise. Confuse them before they see. Pollute them before they shift. You weren't just sensing change. You were being targeted. You didn't stumble into a new level of awareness. You were called into it, and with it came an invisible betrayal. Familiar things began to feel foreign. People around you started to shift away. The routine lost its meaning. The world you built no longer fit who you were becoming. What was that? It was God undoing what could no longer carry your calling. Let's be clear, the fifth dimension is not a trend. It's a heavenly frequency the prophets lived in, where visions override logic, where angels walk beside men, where the veil between physical and spiritual becomes thin. And here's the danger. As you began to shift into this frequency, hell recognized it before you did. So while you were still hesitating, the enemy was already launching sabotage. Because once you step into this realm, you become harder to deceive. You started thinking in alignment with divine timing. You began to discern the difference between good and God. You stopped tolerating spiritual parasites. You realized your identity wasn't tied to what drained you. And suddenly, friends ghosted you. Dreams became intense. Your energy felt unstable. Your body felt tired without reason. Why? Because the elevation exposed the assignment against you. Look at Jesus. The moment he was baptized and heaven opened, he was led into the wilderness, not comfort. Look at Elisha. The moment he received the mantle, he was stalked by kings and confronted by darkness. Look at you. The moment you started dreaming differently, praying differently, seeing differently, you became marked. And the darkness that could ignore you before now sees you as a threat. You may have asked yourself lately, why am I more sensitive all of a sudden? Why do I feel everything so deeply? Why do I crave solitude but fear isolation? Why does my joy feel under attack? Because the mind is the first gateway the enemy tries to hijack when heaven begins your dimensional ascent. It's a war for your perception. Because if you question your shift, you'll abort your scroll. But not today, not this time, not you. What you've been calling confusion was actually clarity being born through warfare. What felt like your life collapsing was actually a lower dimension dying off. You weren't losing yourself. You were shedding what wasn't ever you. Heaven didn't just call you out. Heaven called you up. And the moment the angels were dispatched, the war began. But this war isn't meant to break you. It's meant to reveal you. You are entering the realm of the fifth dimension, not by accident, but by assignment. And in part 2, we'll uncover how and why you were chosen for this elevation. Not recently, but before time began. You were born for this shift, and now the scroll is turning. He chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before him. Ephesians 1:4. This is not where your story begins, not when you first felt the shift, Not when you heard the word dimension, not when the people left, not when the weariness started. No, you were marked before all of it, before the betrayal, before the trial, before you even breathed your first breath. You were sealed for elevation. Heaven didn't panic when you got tired. God didn't reconsider when your prayers became quiet. Why? Because your blueprint already accounted for your becoming. You weren't made to be average. You weren't made to live in the third dimension, bound by fear, control, and illusion. You weren't made to exist in the fourth dimension, lost in emotional cycles and ego battles. You were architected to operate in the fifth dimension, the realm of alignment, clarity, and communion with God. This one will walk with me beyond what their generation calls normal. This one will hear me in silence. This one will carry vision that disrupts systems. This one will see in the spirit and not be afraid. He didn't choose you because of your perfection. He chose you because of your surrender. You said yes in heaven before you ever said yes on earth. That's why nothing has ever fit quite right down here. From the beginning, you were more sensitive. You noticed patterns no one else saw. You felt pain deeper. You questioned systems others accepted. They called you too much, but heaven called you exactly what's needed. You weren't weird. You were wired differently, for elevation. Even your childhood reflected it. The isolation, the early losses, the random attacks. It wasn't coincidence. It was collision between who you were born to be and what darkness feared you'd become. Hell never attacks what isn't a threat. The spiritual parasites didn't come because you were weak. They came because you were waking up. The fatigue wasn't punishment. It was an attempt to shut down your scroll. The confusion wasn't failure. It was the enemy trying to intercept your assignment. But here you are, still standing, still rising, still shifting. That's proof. You were chosen before the battle ever began. Let's go to the word. Joseph was marked with prophetic dreams, then betrayed by his brothers. David was anointed king, then hunted through caves. Esther was positioned in a palace, then had to risk everything to save her people. What do they all have in common? They were marked early. They were misunderstood deeply. They were elevated suddenly, and so are you. You've been asking, why does it feel like I'm being stretched? Why do I sense things I can't explain? Why can't I go back to the way things were? Because the mark won't let you retreat. It's not just anointing, it's spiritual gravity, pulling you forward when your flesh wants to fold. You are being drawn into the fifth dimension because your assignment lives there. Don't misinterpret the pressure, the sudden silence, preparation, the disconnection from people, alignment, the emotional detox, purification, the spiritual warfare, confirmation. You're not losing your way. You're shedding your old identity. God is not distant. He's closer than ever, and He's upgrading your frequency. You didn't choose this. You were chosen, not because of how well you pray, not because of how long you fast, but because before the foundations of the world, He wrote your name on a scroll reserved for elevation. You are marked, you are shifting, and the mark is your guarantee. In part 3, we're going deeper into the hidden counsel of spiritual forces that conspired against your awakening. Because the moment you began to ascend, hell held a meeting. But heaven has the transcript, and it's time to expose it. They conspire together against your people. They plot against those you cherish. Psalm 83:3. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians 6:12. While you were praying, they were plotting. While you were surrendering, they were scheming. While you were stepping into higher realms, A dark council was convening in the spirit, hell's war room, assembling strategies to block your ascension. Picture it, a circle of unclean spirits, ancient, territorial, manipulative. They don't wear horns, they wear history. They've studied your bloodline. They know your triggers. They've charted every weak point, waiting for the moment you'd awaken. And when heaven began the shift in you, they called the meeting. This one is rising. This one is breaking cycles. This one cannot be allowed to complete the shift. So they issued assignments. Here's how they work. 1. Spirits of confusion. To scramble your mind during elevation, to make you question if what you're sensing is real. 2. Spirits of fatigue. To drain your energy right before breakthrough, to make prayer feel heavy and worship feel distant. 3. Spirits of distraction. To send counterfeit relationships, to lure you with emotional chaos when you were meant to be still. 4th, spirits of religion. To make you feel guilty for seeing in the spirit, to shame your frequency, to label your clarity as rebellion. This is not paranoia. This is a classified briefing from the courts of heaven. They know they can't unmark you, so they try to deceive you into disqualifying yourself. The council's greatest weapon is distortion. If they can twist how you see yourself, you won't step into who God says you are. If they can distract you with survival, you'll never activate your spiritual weapons. If they can drown you in doubt, you'll silence your prophetic voice. Yes, they've kept a spiritual dossier, sensitive to frequency shifts, monitored during full moons, dreams increasing, send distractions before sleep. Emotionally healing, reintroduce an old soul tie, stepping into spiritual identity, send religious guilt. But here's what they didn't plan for. You'd wake up anyway. You'd press through the fog. You'd pray when you couldn't speak. You'd declare victory before you even saw the breakthrough. Your obedience is not personal, it's strategic. Because with every yes to God, you're not just growing, you're tearing down the council's framework. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, purity over compromise, presence over performance, you destroy a layer of the enemy's plan. This is your warning and your weapon. You've been under attack because of what you carry, because of what you're called to awaken, because of the dimensional authority that's being activated in you. But now you have language. Now you have eyes. Now you see. And that is the council's collapse. The darkness met in secret. They conspired while you were healing. They wrote plans to block your rising. But heaven has now exposed their meeting minutes. You are not a victim of warfare. You are the reason for it. Because what you're stepping into shifts atmospheres, reclaims regions, and awakens destinies. In part 4, we go even deeper. We enter the most painful phase of elevation, not when the enemy shouts, but when God seems silent. Because in the 5th dimension, silence is not punishment, it's sacred preparation. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. There is a moment in the journey to higher realms that almost no one warns you about. It's not the warfare. It's not the betrayal. It's not even the loss. It's the silence. That long, stretching, soul-breaking silence. When God, who once felt close, feels quiet. Not because you failed, but because you're about to be forged. This is the part where the heavens feel sealed, the dreams dry up, the presence feels faint. The word reads like water with no taste. You ask, God, did I do something wrong? Why did you pull away now? Where did you go? But the silence is not abandonment. It's refinement. It's not distance. It's dimension shift. Because before God promotes the chosen, he always purifies them in the hush. Job didn't just lose wealth and family. He lost divine nearness. He said, I looked for him, but I couldn't find him. But he also said, he knows the way that I take, and I shall come forth as gold. That is fifth dimensional faith. Faith that doesn't feed on feelings. Faith that doesn't depend on signs. Faith that walks even when heaven whispers nothing. You're not being punished, you're being preserved. Because what God is doing now is too holy for noise. In this silence, God is sharpening your discernment, deepening your roots, upgrading your spirit's frequency, separating your identity from emotional dependency. This is not the absence of activity. This is the administration of glory. In this silence, your soul will want answers, but your spirit is being trained to trust without explanation. Because in the fifth dimension, logic fades and spirit leads. This silence forces you to let go of control, surrender the need to be in the know, anchor in the word rather than in whispers. Trust God's timing, not your emotional timeline. Moses waited in silence on the mountain. Then the fire came. Elijah heard thunder, wind, and earthquake. But God was in the still, small voice. Jesus spent 30 years in silence before one miracle. And you're being shaped in the stillness so that when you speak, it will come with weight. This is why it hurts, because God is not just muting the outside noise. He's silencing the insecure version of you, the approval-seeking version of you, the tired, striving, overthinking version of you. Why? So the truthful, fire-filled, scroll-carrying version of you can emerge. Be careful here, because this is where false voices enter. Maybe God left you. Maybe this whole dimension thing is deception. Maybe you're not chosen after all. These lies are loud only because heaven is preparing something weighty. Do not bow to counterfeit clarity. The silence is not rejection, it's rehearsal. This silence, it's sacred. You're not being delayed, you're being developed. You're not being abandoned, you're being anointed. And very soon, when the silence breaks, the law of return will activate, and everything sown in pain will be reaped in power. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. Galatians 6:7. Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. Psalm 126, verse 5. The silence tested you. The stillness refined you. The warfare tried to drain you. But now the law of return has been activated. This isn't karma. This isn't wishful thinking. This is divine justice. Heaven's law. What was planted in the spirit will be harvested in fire. You wept in the dark. Now joy floods your morning. You sowed obedience in the wilderness. Now doors open without knocking. You gave when it hurt. Now provision overtakes you like a wave. Every act of faith, every whispered yes, every seed planted in pain. Heaven never forgot. You thought the delay meant denial, but God was multiplying your return in secret, because the fifth dimension doesn't operate on time. It operates on spiritual momentum, and now your scroll is releasing what's been stored. Visions are being resurrected. Prayers are being answered swiftly. The harvest is chasing you down. You were drained emotionally. Now joy is your baseline. You were silenced prophetically. Now your voice carries thunder. You were misjudged. Now favor speaks louder than their lies. This is not petty payback. This is precision prophecy. God doesn't just repay, He restores with fire. When God says return, the entire spiritual ecosystem shifts. Angels are dispatched, delays are reversed, scrolls are opened, assignments are released, because the God who watched you suffer has scheduled your public recompense. What's coming is not random, it's return on investment. Heaven saw the seed of tears, the offering no one knew about, the silent endurance, the refusal to give up when it made no sense to continue. And now, your faith has matured into fulfillment. This harvest requires focus, because with every return, the enemy will attempt a rerun, old distractions will reappear, former soul ties may try to reattach, toxic thoughts will whisper again. But your discernment has grown, and now you can spot sabotage before it speaks. This return is too holy to be wasted on old patterns. The return doesn't just bless, it establishes. You're not going back to where you were. You're being positioned to go beyond anything you've ever imagined. The fifth dimension demands that your harvest also becomes an altar. You don't just collect it, you use it to build, bless, and awaken others. The law is moving, the scroll is speaking, the harvest is manifesting. You're not in the silence anymore. You're in the season of supernatural return. And in part 6, you will hear what hell fears the most, the verdict from heaven's courtroom, declaring your name, your calling, and your victory. You've sown in the shadows, but heaven is about to reward you in the open. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. The court was seated, and the books were open. Daniel 7:10. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord. Isaiah 54:17. The scroll has turned. The seed has been seen. The silence has spoken. And now, the court of heaven is in session. This is not metaphor. This is the highest jurisdiction in existence, where angels stand as witnesses, where the blood of Jesus speaks louder than your accuser, where destinies are not debated, they're decreed. You thought you were being judged for your delays. You thought heaven was silent because of your weakness. But in the courtroom of the Spirit, God was gathering evidence on your behalf. Every tear, cataloged. Every time you worshiped through warfare, noted. Every betrayal you forgave, filed. Every time you resisted retaliation, witnessed. And now the verdict is ready. You are in the courtroom. To your left, the accuser of the brethren, listing your failures, shame, missed moments. But in front of you, the judge of glory rises. And behind you, the blood speaks. Covered, restored, still mine. The court listens, the heavens shake, and then the gavel slams down. Case closed, scroll sealed, calling confirmed. You didn't just survive, you were vindicated. Vindicated from the lies, vindicated from the inner torment, vindicated from the delay that wasn't your fault. The blood testifies, they stayed faithful in the silence. They walked when others sat. They fought when no one was watching. Let this echo in your soul. No longer bound by old cycles. No longer delayed by demonic accusations. No longer guilty by association. No longer stuck in the middle of a battle they already won. You are free. You are validated. You are authorized. Your scroll isn't pending. Your scroll is sealed in fire. You're not the same person who entered the battle. Now when heaven calls your name, it echoes through. Regions, dimensions, bloodlines, generations. Because you didn't just win for yourself, you broke something open for everyone connected to you. And with one decree, heaven incinerated what hell built. Guilt, gone. Spiritual fatigue, canceled. Identity confusion, broken, unseen interference, judged and cast out. Because where the verdict is rendered, freedom becomes permanent. You leave this chamber different. You came in weary. You walk out with weighty authority. You came in uncertain. You walk out with angelic backing. You came in questioning if you could survive. You leave knowing you were born to rule. This verdict doesn't just restore you, it recommissions you. The court of heaven has spoken. The accuser is silenced. The scroll is signed. The anointing is active. The verdict is eternal. And now God prepares to honor you in the presence of those who misunderstood your silence. In part 7, we leave the courtroom and enter the banquet room, where God sets a table in the very place where you were once mocked. The robe is ready, the oil is flowing, the honor is public. Instead of your shame, you shall have double honor. Isaiah 61:7. You came out of the courtroom, cleared, crowned, commissioned, and now heaven says, let the table be set. Not in secret, not in shadows, but in full sight of every spirit, system, and person who ever doubted what God was doing in your life. This is not petty, this is prophetic justice. Because God doesn't just deliver you, He displays you. He makes you a living example of what happens when someone stays faithful through fire. He prepares the table in front of the very voices that mocked your tears, questioned your anointing, misinterpreted your silence, and dismissed your process. The place where they saw you crawl, they will now see you crowned. The valley where they whispered, they've lost it, will now echo with songs of your return. Not because you fought for it, but because you stayed under God's hand. This table isn't revenge, it's vindication through worship. You anoint my head with oil. The oil flows again, but this time, it's not just for your survival. It's for your assignment. It's oil that breaks yokes in others. It's oil that carries weight in rooms you were once excluded from. It's oil that attracts alignment and repels attack. And heaven makes sure it's seen. Because your scars are now shining, let's speak it clearly. Relationships that drained you, replaced with ones that build. Opportunities that were stolen, replaced with divine doors no man can shut. Seasons where you were overlooked, now replaced with moments of sudden visibility. You were buried, not to die, but to be planted. And now the harvest is rising from under your feet. You're not being elevated just to be seen. You're being elevated to speak with clarity into confusion. Carry deliverance in your presence. Walk into rooms with fire in your feet. Restore others who are still in their silence. This honor comes with weight, and you are finally ready for it. Because the pressure that broke others only built you. He doesn't just vindicate, He overflows. My cup runs over. That means overflow of wisdom, overflow of favor, overflow of divine timing, overflow of revelation, overflow of anointing to heal others, because this table isn't about a single meal. It's about launching your next mission. The very places where you were mocked, misunderstood, and mishandled are now becoming mirrors of God's majesty. Because restoration is not God simply giving you back what was taken. It's Him giving you more than what you lost, with witnesses. And in part 8, you'll step out of honor and into heaven's strategy. You'll discover why the battle was so fierce, why the silence was so deep, and why the reward had to be so weighty. Because your pain wasn't just personal, it was preparation for global purpose. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Romans 8:28. Your pain has made you a vessel fit for honor, sanctified, useful to the Master, prepared for every good work. 2 Timothy 2:21. You didn't go through all of that just to have a story to tell. You didn't survive the dark night just to clap when the sun rose. You didn't endure all that pressure just to return to life as usual. No, the warfare had a weight. The silence had a strategy. The fire had a purpose. You were being formed for a greater mission. The depth of your attack revealed the height of your assignment. What hit others lightly tried to destroy you completely. Because your calling is not average. You don't carry good advice. You carry fire and blueprints. You don't just teach, you awaken. You don't just heal, you rebuild ruined places. This is not about applause, it's about assignment. He wasn't just testing your faith, he was forging a weapon of clarity in a confused generation, a weapon of truth in a culture built on deception, a weapon of healing where trauma has become normalized. That's you. What broke you now fuels you. What drained you now drives you. What silenced you now powers your roar. Because your scars aren't your shame, they are now your access to authority. That childhood pain, God already had the mantle waiting. That betrayal, God already had the table set. That confusion, God already had the verdict written. The pain didn't catch heaven off guard. It triggered your next chapter, and now you don't just walk in healing, you walk in commissioning. Let this sink in. You didn't just survive to smile. You survived to speak with fire. You didn't just heal to rest. You healed to rescue others still burning. This greater mission is not a dream. It's a demand from heaven. You are called to shift atmospheres, break generational curses, build what never existed, speak into dimensions others avoid. You were born for this, and every part of your past is now part of your prophetic arsenal, the spiritual kind. You now understand how to discern warfare early, how to protect your peace, how to move in sync with God's calendar, how to resist the need for approval, how to pray with precision, not panic. That's not just survival, that's supernatural training. You are now a specialist in what once tried to destroy you. Your voice carries healing for the discouraged, language for the silent fire, for the dry bones, strategy for the next generation. What you carry cannot be delayed any longer because someone is waiting on the other side of your yes. The warfare was the classroom, the silence was the certification, the restoration was the announcement, and now the mission is unlocked. In Part 9, you will speak directly to the ones still stuck in silence, still drowning in fear, still unsure if they were ever called. Because the same fire that freed you is now about to set others ablaze. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from the hand of the enemy. Psalm 107, verse 2. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. Revelation 12:11. This part isn't about poetry, isn't about Polish, isn't about performance. This part is testimony. Because after everything you've seen, everything you've survived, everything you've endured, you have to speak, not for validation, but for liberation. They don't need the edited story. They don't need the neat conclusion. They need the fire that formed you. They need the honesty that healed you. They need to hear the voice that once whispered, but now roars. Speak now, because your words are not just healing. They are keys to unlock someone else's chains. Yes, I felt lost. Yes, I doubted my own sanity. Yes, I questioned if God still saw me. Yes, I almost gave up, more than once. Yes, I was spiritually numb, emotionally wrecked, physically worn out. But God didn't leave me. He rebuilt me. That truth, it's deliverance in real time for someone who's drowning in silence right now. Tell them, you're not crazy, you're called. You're not weak, you're transitioning. You're not forgotten, you're being formed. You're not cursed, you're being crowned. Your voice carries the sound of hope on fire. And when you speak, it won't be empty. It will shake atmospheres. You're not just telling your story, you're calling others into theirs. Let this be your altar call. To the one hiding behind burnout, come home. To the one buried under shame, he still calls your name. To the one addicted to perfection, he uses the broken. To the one who thought it was too late, you are right on time. I am a survivor of spiritual warfare. I carry the residue of silence and the roar of revival. My past has become my platform. My scars are scrolls of freedom. I will not be muted. I will not be minimized. I have seen the fire, and I am still standing. Now I speak, not for attention, but for activation. Every time you speak, strongholds break. Every time you testify, fear shatters. Every time you open your mouth, the same fire that refined you leaps into someone else's life. This is how revival spreads. Through people who aren't afraid to say, "I've been there, and God met me there." Your story isn't just powerful, it's prophetic. You didn't just survive for closure, you survived for commissioning. You didn't just make it out for healing, you made it out to lead others in. In part 10, we will rise together and release the final call. Not a whisper, not a suggestion, but a war cry from the remnant to the realms. This is your voice. This is your moment. This is your fire. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Isaiah 61. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. James 4-7. You will tread upon the lion and cobra, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. Psalm 91:13. This is not just a conclusion. This is a call to arms. You've wept, you've waited, you've warred, you've been refined in silence, vindicated in court, and honored in public. But now, you must rise, you must rule, you must refuse to bow, because you were born for this fire. No more shrinking to keep the peace, no more doubting what God already confirmed, no more apologizing for being set apart. You are not here to blend in. You are here to break open atmospheres. You were built to burn with holy fire in a world going cold with compromise. You carry an authority forged in affliction, a clarity born from consecration, a voice backed by scrolls and sealed by blood, a presence that makes darkness tremble, but authority does not beg, it decrees. Now is not the time to ask for permission. Now is the time to occupy. I rise from every delay and doubt. I rule in the authority given to me by the courts of heaven. I refuse to bow to fear, fatigue, or failure. I was born for this fire. I am chosen, crowned, commissioned, and dangerous to hell. I am not waiting for revival. I am revival. This is my hour. This is my voice. This is my dimension. To the prophets, your sight has been sharpened. Speak what you see. To the intercessors, your tears have been stored. Release the fire. To the builders, your blueprints have matured. Now build what eyes have not seen. To the wounded, your healing is now your hammer. Break chains for others. To the watchers, no more watching in silence. Blow the trumpet. You are not a candle. You are a consuming flame. The fifth dimension isn't about floating in bliss. It's about fighting from victory. Every attack you've endured, every parasite that tried to drain you, every voice that tried to shrink you, they all miscalculated. They thought you'd quit, but instead, you ignited. Now take the scroll, take the crown, take the oil, take your place. The kingdom does not advance with silence. It advances with fire-filled, unshakable chosen ones who rise in obedience and refuse to bow. I speak this over you now. May your feet carry fire into places that feared your arrival. May your voice shatter ceilings and awaken generations. May your hands heal what trauma tried to destroy. May your dreams return in clarity. May your scroll burn with fresh revelation. May every parasite that once drained you now see you from under your feet. May the roar in your spirit never be silenced again. You are a breaker. You are a firewalker. You are heaven's answer to earth's crisis. Now go, take the fire, and do not look back.